when you were starting out in Saferway, and you then transitioned into Whole Foods, I think you kind of merged with the company after 2 years. Did you have at that point a vision for what Whole Foods would become?
No. The whole vision thing, I mean, I think entrepreneurs have a bad habit of recasting their success and almost it was destined, or they look back and because of the human mind, the way it works, it looks for patterns, it looks for connections, it wants it to make all ordered sense. And so I always make a joke that I did not go up onto the top of the mountain and God did not speak to me and give me this assignment. And I have been carrying out God's will ever since. I mean, we did Whole Foods because Saferway was too small. We weren't a real grocery store. And we wanted to be a real grocery store initially. It was like, what if we could just have a bigger store that was like, I mean, you couldn't do one-stop shopping at Saferway. And Saferway was very pure. It was very idealistic. We didn't sell, it was vegetarian, and we didn't sell sugar, we didn't sell white flour, we didn't sell alcohol, we didn't even sell caffeine. So no coffee, and also just didn't do that much business. I mean, basically we narrowed our focus so narrow, we were so pure, and so this is the way people should eat, that we unnecessarily restricted the market too narrowly. So when we did the first Whole Foods market, we said, well, we're still going to be natural, still going to be organic, still going to be focused around health, and but we are going to sell some products that have sugar in them. We are going to sell beer and wine. We're going to sell coffee. We're going to sell meat. We're going to sell what people want to buy, but within the natural and organic framework. Right. That proved to be a very successful strategy because while Saferway struggled, Whole Foods became the highest volume natural food store in the United States within just a few months of opening. Wow. It was a huge success.
And that one was in Austin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that an ongoing struggle even through the decades of trying to reconcile kind of this moral or value framework with what's practical to go to the market with?
Yeah, it really bothers non-business people who don't have to meet a market test. They don't understand that you're ultimately in business to serve customers. And so we're frequently judged like I'm a vegan. So a lot of vegans can accuse me of being a hypocrite because you sell meat, and it's like, I don't eat it, but customers want to buy it. I don't eat a lot of things Whole Foods sells. And you have to meet the market where you find it, or you'll go out of business ultimately. And so business people inherently understand that because they are all having to serve customers. And I always tell my vegan friends, like, hey, I'd like nothing better than to stop selling meat. And why don't you? I said, because the customers keep buying it. If they'd stop voting with their dollars for it, if they'd stop buying it, we'd stop selling it. Right. You're not doing a good job persuading people not to eat meat. Don't blame me because we're selling what the customers want to buy. I have never had that much problem. I've always seen, I've been an idealist, but I'm also a pragmatist. And what's the art of the possible? What is it possible to do today? And then over time, the art of the possible changes. You can do more in the future than you could do today. So you keep the long-term ideals in place while taking steps towards them, but you have a long-term vision, you have a long-term view. So I've never really had this kind of anguish that other people have. It's just always seemed like you do sometimes make some trade-offs, but they're necessary to meet the market as you find it.
Yeah, Ayn Rand used to talk about the problem if you have a contradiction between the moral and the practical, and you didn't have an anything goes standpoint. There was still a framework from which you operated.
We still had our quality standards.
That's right.
And they kept us from drifting too far. In a lot of ways, Whole Foods has always had these two elements within it that struggle with each other, two polarities.
Right.
One polarity is what I call you can call the foodie polarity.
Right.
Somebody that's really preoccupied with food and all the different aspects of it. And then within Whole Foods, there's a second element, which is the Puritan element. Food is not for pleasure, food is for health.
Right.
So food for pleasure versus food for health have struggled for the soul of Whole Foods. And sometimes one waxes and the other one wanes, and then the opposite occurs. So getting a good synthesis between those two has partly been what's led to our success. We've had elements of both. If you're a foodie, you can shop at Whole Foods and find really outstandingly high quality, good tasty food. And if you're a Puritan, if you're paleo, or if you're vegan, or if you're ketogenic, or whatever your particular diet is, Whole Foods has got what you want.
So if we were to extrapolate now to the general entrepreneurial and business world, for people who are saying, you know, I've got a certain set of values I want to put in the marketplace, but I also realize I have to meet the market in order to be able to be successful. What type of framework or considerations could you give them? Let's say it's outside the food, but it might be something else.
Well, first thing I would do is, in terms of conscious capitalism, I mean, it's like first you ask what your purpose is. And you don't want to drift away from your purpose. As you go out and fulfill your business, it's always a risk that you will forget what your purpose is, why you're doing the business in the first place, what you're trying to accomplish. So the purpose acts as your North Star that keeps you on track. Even if you wander off, you can get back on track by going back to making sure this is aligned with your purpose.
Right.
And secondly, I think the stakeholder philosophy is very important. The stakeholders being the business doesn't exist only to create value for the investors and the owners. It also exists to create value for its customers, for the people that work there, for the suppliers that trade with it, for the communities that we're doing business in. And then, in a sense, the larger environment as well, minimize our environmental damage. So if you have a stakeholder philosophy, everything shifts. You begin to ask yourself, is this a win-win strategy for all of our stakeholders? Is this going to be good for if you're making decisions that are, say, good for your customers but bad for your employees, maybe that's not the best decision. And if you're making one that screws the suppliers, maybe that's not the best decision. So how do you make decisions where they're all going to simultaneously flourish? And if you keep purpose and stakeholders in mind, those type of contradictions and trade-offs tend to get resolved pretty easily.